The Rotted Woods are one of the four shifting Earth events found in Elden Ring Night Rain, and I believe I have the story figured out. But it will take a little bit of explaining. Grab a snack and let's dive into one of the tales hiding beneath our noses. Night Rain finds its placement in time a bit wonky, as it's not a part of linear time. This allows for locations, events, and characters from across the timeline and other world break events. Much like how your brain grows through the entirety of your life as you experience a life threatening situation in a desperate attempt to think of a solution, so too is the world trying to survive. And thus, the night is filled with the memories deemed too important to forget. While most of their existence has been erased from the world, you can still find the remnants of their memory in the base game of Elden Ring. 3 years ago, I noticed something interesting about a certain item, which led me down a speculation rabbit hole that only saw vindication in Night Rain. That item is the Scorpion Charm. Although there are multiple, for this video we will treat them as representing the same thing. The Scorpion Charms show us a scorpion shedding its shell without a stinger, devouring what is called a heart, but shown as a liver. This is because in ancient Mesopotamia, the heart and liver were seen as sources of blood, and thus synonymous with one another. A talisman carried by assassins who strike unseen. Patterned on a scorpion freshly shed of its exoskeleton, its claws seizing a heart that shimmers with magic. We get livers in-game from herbivorous creatures, the most notable example being deer. Why are deer notable? Well, I'm sure you can recall the ancestral spirits worshipped by the ancestral followers. Now, there is a liver, or heart, that is infused with some power. Ancestral spirits seem to be the parallel to rot, as we learn that life comes from death as it does from birth. This makes the deers very rot-coded and cements a connection to the cycle of rebirth. The fresh liver of a beast, a luscious fruit of life, found by hunting herbivorous beasts. We find in the Grand Cloister at the Lake of Rot the Scorpion Stinger, a dagger fashioned from a great scorpion's tail glistening with scarlet rot, a ceremonial tool used by heretics, crafted from the relic of a sealed outer god. Where we find this item, we find many pests in worship, though in version 1.0, you can find unique rotted ancestral followers, which were removed, only to reappear again in the Rotted Woods in Night Rain. This would give us a place of ancestral worship. However, there is no ancestral spirit for the location. Perhaps this is the purpose of the third corpse in Nokron. Either the remnants of a deer without a heart, liver, or a replacement to eventually be moved down there to clean up the rot. There is a scout in the lake that drops the horn charm that boosts immunity to poison and rot. So it would seem that at least this generation of ancestral followers are trying to move back in. Past the Grand Cloister, you find a waterway that leads to a tranquil cave, much like the ones we are taken to confront the ancestral spirit deer. However, this one has an Estelle, a space scorpion, if you will. Before you comment, I know it's an antlion, but I'm sure you can understand what I mean, as it shares scorpion-like aspects in its design. This informs us of what we're supposed to think when we wonder about what happened to the deer in this area. But what did happen here? Well, if we follow the story told to us by a couple of items, there seems to have been a swordsman who wore blue, who was able to defeat a rot god. This same person also seems to have been the teacher of Melania, the Blade of Mikola, a name I'm sure you are familiar with. An interesting detail we can notice via the prosthesis wearer's heirloom is that it would seem that this swordsman also wore a false sword arm, which brings interesting connections with House Mirai, who are born sickly, and the head of the house's fascination with Melania. A talisman engraved with a scene from a heroic tale. Though born into the accursed rot, when the young girl encountered her mentor and his flowing blade, she gained wings of unparalleled strength. So, who was this guy? A cloth doll depicting a dancer garbed in blue, an ancient heirloom of some sort, raises attack power with lower equipment load. The dancer in blue represents a fairy who, in legend, bestowed a flowing sword upon a blind swordsman. Blade in hand, the swordsman sealed away an ancient god, a god that was rot itself. Legends speak of a master of the sword garbed in blue, and his curved blade that was patterned after flowing water. Strong attacks unleash a series of strikes akin to a dance, offering a glimpse into the legend. The blue color of its fabric symbolizes brisk waters, as fluid and flowing as the sword in the hand of its wearer. Just as still waters turn foul, stagnation leads to decay. Warriors must remain ever drifting. A talisman depicting a curved sword and a swordsman. It is said that a blind swordsman was the originator of this technique, the art of allowing one's opponent to strike so as to leave them vulnerable to a well-timed reply. So it would seem in ancient times, a swordsman challenged the local deity of the community of the Grand Cloister in an attempt to bring the cleansing of the flowing waters. So it is this that likely puts him in the ancient Rao culture, the great makers of the waterways and aqueducts that run across the lands between. They understood the nature of rot and how to keep it in symbiosis with nature, to not let it get out of control. The stagnation of water meant the loss of potency in the chi of the area, the water being corrupted by the worldly nature imbuing it. This envoy of the ancient culture would defeat the ancient kaiju creature, and in doing so mark the end of the Lords of Rot, as they'd come to be known. These ancient people, star callers who had allowed the corruption to take over their very bodies to bring them closer to the truth. These same ancients who had been trying to call down a star to change their fate, only to call a monster that would destroy their world, their lives, their deity, and their very bodies, usurping it and taking it all for its own. Perhaps the ancestral followers moving into the area will bring back the necessary energies and finish the ages-old project that their ancestors started. When we fight Morgoth, the Omen Lord, we see him unable to contain the defilement inside him any longer, and his Omen power erupts around him. And when defeated, he lacks his horn, his tail, even his size is diminished, as if we cleansed him of impurities. Similarly, the Lake of Rot is seen as the blood of the god of Rot defeated there. And it would make sense. If a creature of great size had its source of rot, the stinger, removed, it would proceed to bleed out, draining it of the power that it once held, leaving it an empty shell to receive a new blessing. Enter the heart of the ancestral spirit deer, granting the scorpion the ability to shed its skin without the need for its stinger. The new form would function similar to the scorpion, but now all it would have is the great claws that remained. It would become a pair of living shears gliding through the earth as if it were water. It would become Fartus, Stone Shield. Noster also acts as a parallel to the Blue Fairy, and Fartus, the Blind Swordsman. And the rock kept at bay is the will of Miranda, but we'll return to that in a moment. Fartus would naturally be attracted to a landscape similar to what it had created prior. And if you don't like the idea that there was a deer for the Grand Cloister, then we could probably agree that there were certainly communities of ancestral followers and their spirit deer in what is referred to as the Rotted Woods, thus still giving us a deer to be consumed. We could even theorize multiple deer have fallen this way. You can actually see that Noster's antennae have growths very similar to the antlers of the ancestral spirits, which gives us an interesting connection to life and death, and possibly shows that maybe Noster is the quote-unquote deer whose heart allows Fartus to be revived. Not just deer would be prey to the pair of them, but great predators of the forest as well. This could include many bosses that are also found in the base game of Caelid, such as the Lord Sworn Captain, the Black Blade Kindred, the Ulcerated Tree Spirit, Magma Worms, Erd Tree Avatars, the Bell-Bearing Hunter, and the Battlefield Commander is a Day 1 boss. There are some bosses, like the Tibia Mariner or the Centipede Demon on Night 1, or the Royal Carrion Knight field boss, that are hard to find placements for. But remembering the nature of non-linear timelines, we can find reasons to place these beings here. The Knights are either here for the Carrion Radon, or for the Haley Tree forces. The Tibia Mariner are here because of the water that would be used to wash away the rot, the rivers made by Rao to cleanse the corruption. And the Centipede Demon represents that self-same corruption, the other side of rot, living in death. It would also serve as an Omukade, or divine centipede, to interrupt the interplay between the divine forces of the forest. Also, like how Caelid has the Dragon Communion Cathedral and borders on the zone known as the Dragon Barrow, so too do we find many dragon-related bosses, such as the Draconic Tree Sentinel as both a field boss and a Night 2 boss, which can alternatively have Dragonkin Soldier or a Great Worm instead. Speaking of dragon-related bosses, when you go on a Gaping Jaw expedition, you have a 20% increased likelihood of encountering the Smelter Demon as a boss for your very first night. The significance of why the Smelter Demon is related to dragons is a topic we will cover in our next video, but for now, when we think of the meaning of the Smelter Demon here, we should think of the Radon soldiers using fire to clear the rotted woods away, a machine of war to carve away even the strongest of foes, such as giant spiders, the apex predator of the forest, which is mysteriously absent from the sentient pest expeditions, probably because it was defeated in that timeline. That's right, the alliance of Noster and Fartus is one forged in a common enemy, Freya, the twin-headed spider. This conflict could have probably led ancient cultures to try and recreate it, resulting in the flying spider scorpions found in the ruins of Rao. It is certainly an evocative and powerful image. Spider scorpions that can fly. If you consider the non-linear nature of the world, then perhaps in one timeline, the rotted woods existed alongside the Shattering War, and Radon forces built a fortress there in an attempt to seek out its source and fight back. Perhaps as a lighthouse in the storm. Interestingly, this fort is positioned roughly where Radon can be found in the Wailing Dunes, echoing the fire burning at the top of the fortress, keeping the scarlet rot at bay with its burning determination. The Rotted Woods also seems to be a place where great Miranda flowers grew, positively dripping with runic sap. Perhaps this forest was being used as a garden before it fell to rot. These same Miranda flowers would feed and infest the insects of the forest, something we see in the Everdark Sovereign fight. This would manifest itself as a cordyceps-like fungal plant growth that is very akin to sacramental buds, keeping the insects alive in order to keep the cycle of the forest alive, utilizing the power of the union of vessels to seek greater heights. Perhaps it's the nature of this flower that led to the symbiosis of Noster and Fartus as they fought against the great spider. This would be a story that would be echoed in another place sometime far into the future with Mikola and Radon, and how the Age of Compassion sought to overthrow the order of the twin-faced god, and how Melania is the flower that keeps Radon alive, albeit in spite, and thus keeps Mikola in his mortal state, unable to ascend to his next manifestation. Moog can also be seen as a similar force in the blood used to revive a lord and be the conduit of apotheosis of a god. This story, however, would be lost to the night. A forgotten forest in what is now Caelid's Wailing Dunes, as that is the most likely place for the Rotted Woods to have been, as Noster Seeing refers to a forest that experienced desertification after waters cleansed away the rot. Radon's Arena, as a desert that has aqueducts coming from the northern side, seems to fit this description. And much like how the flowing waters of Rao would cleanse the rot in one area, so too would they do it again. And with the rot cleared away, the forest was unable to sustain itself and fell to desertification. Though erased, it would be remembered by the world, as all things found in Night Rain. Because of the nature of Night Rain being non-linear, there are many elements of different areas and stories blended together in the fevered dreams of the world. In this way, many locations we see are actually the combination of several locations that are similar. The parallel stories echo into a larger truth remembered by the world. In these moments of struggling not to end, looking for anything it can remember that can save it from this ending brought about by the Night Lord. So while I have presented an argument for the Rotted Woods being where Radon's arena is in base game Elden Ring, I'm sure there is also an argument for where the Heart of Ionia currently resides, as a sort of history repeating itself situation. There's also the potential of a Rotted Woods existing in the Lake of Rot, as we know that's where the rot was sealed away oh so long ago. And perhaps in one timeline, the flooding of Liurnia led to the staving off of desertification. And because of the fragmented memories of Night Rain, all of these are true in their own way. Like many things in Elden Ring, it's a lot of things. I bet you could even make a convincing story around the Rotted Woods once existing in the consecrated snowfield, as a tundra is similar to a desert, though certainly not in the way most would think. not many trees or plants can grow, and the snow dunes act very similar to the sand of the desert. It's just a difference of temperature. It would also reinforce connections to Mikola and Melania, though one makes the comment that Moog has a stronger connection in that story. Which then reminds us that Radon and Moog both play the same role in the DLC as well, and thus there is no real conflict. I'm sure there are even more places you could find connections to, as well as ones we could invent ourselves of completely new locations. Such is also valid. Let me know your ideas and headcanons for the Rotted Woods. Do you think I listed any of the right locations? Do you think I missed an obvious one? I look forward to seeing people's thoughts in the comments. Like and subscribe to stay tuned for more. And I encourage you to always be looking for more secrets. I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Stay frosty, everyone.